Before I call question time today, could I, as the President did in the Senate today, take this opportunity just to remind our visitors in the galleries that they are welcome to attend and observe proceedings of the House of Representatives. However, their entry places upon them an obligation to observe proper standards of behaviour. It is the right of all members of this House to put their point of view as representatives of the people of Australia. It is not in order, however, for visitors and galleries to interject or behave in such a way as to interrupt proceedings. I, therefore, on behalf of all members of the House, appeal to visitors to conduct themselves in an appropriate manner, and I look forward to an interesting question time. Questions without notice. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister two simple questions. Will he today tell home buyers and small businesses that the current interest rate spiral is over, and will he tell the timber workers and their families before they leave today that their jobs are safe? Yes or no?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, let me deal with the second question first and make this clear, that whatever this government does about the forests of this country, it will do in the national interest.
Order.
It won't be. It will seek to, as always, find the appropriate balance between the environment and the prerogatives of people in the marketplace, including the timber industry. We'll seek to make certain that we have a sustainable forest products industry, not one that's simply hanging by an ever thinner thread over residual native forests, but rather one that's got a future. And in the doing of that, the government will move on a basis of cooperation with the states, as we've done already with the National Forest Policy Statement, and hopefully into regional.
Those on my left will cease interjecting.
For your information, the statement's been signed by all premiers other than Tasmania, and work towards representative reserve systems under regional forest agreements. That's where the government is going. But given the fact that the Commonwealth is not a manager of forests but has a power in respect of exports, it will guarantee that its operation of that authority of the export controls in respect of woodchip licences will be operated in a way where we pay service to the interests of employment and activity, and at the same time seek to preserve those stands of trees which the nation expects us to preserve. Now, Mr Speaker, as you know, the government's now seeking to evaluate and verify
Order.
You're a happy little bunch, aren't you? You've got happier again. That's always, I say, a prime condition for you staying over there. Mr Speaker, in the verification of
Member for
these,
McKellar has been already asked to cease
where
interjecting.
states will be asked to look at the quality of some of these areas, where in fact those which have important reserves of trees will be protected, and where not, where we find evidence of the fact that these areas have been logged or don't have the heritage or wilderness values that might be otherwise ascribed to them, then of course in that circumstance the government would take a different view in respect to their continued working. At any rate, the one thing this government is doing for this industry and the people who work in it is something the coalition never thought of, and that is giving them a sustainable future and giving them financial support.
Order.
And giving them financial support where and in what places that future isn't sustainable. Now, that's something you've never done. It's what is overwhelmingly, I think, the requirement of, as I put it, the national interest, and where the very clear view of the community about preserving those important stands of trees is in evidence. We'll try and meet both imperatives sensibly. But I'll guarantee you this, Mr Speaker, the government will not
The member for Moore.
will not change policy under any duress. So if the timber industry
Order.
or its
Those on my
representatives
left
think
will
that
cease
they'll
interjecting.
in some way intimidate the government into a policy change, they'll be mistaken. Nor will the environment movement and the extremists amongst them push the government into policies that are not sustainable. As always, Mr Speaker, it's not unusual. It's never been unusual, particularly in this difficult area of the environment, where so much is in the eye of the beholder and powers are split between the Commonwealth and the states. It's always been difficult to steer a middle course, but difficult though it may be, a middle course we will steer. Now, Mr Speaker,
Order.
Mr Speaker, in respect of interest
Member for
rates,
Maranoa.
what underpins the low interest rate structure in Australia is low inflation. And as we saw in the forecast released by the Treasurer,
Those on my left. Order. Look. Order. I am again reminding all members of this place of the provisions of Standing Order 55. The Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, it is low inflation that Downer vows a fresh start. How are you going over there, Curly? Old darling.
Order. The Prime Minister will resume his seat.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Prime Minister resume his seat. The member for Isaacson. A point of order.
Point of order is under Standing Order 145 of relevance, sir. The fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister sought your protection, but once he arose, he intended to go off on another tangent again. He can only really expect your protection when he attends himself to the question in hand.
Order. The Honourable Prime Minister was commencing to talk about interest rates, which was the basis of the question. I think I've had recourse this week to warn the member for O'Connor for talking when I am. Those on my right also. The Leader of the Opposition asked a question on interest rates. The Prime Minister was about to talk on that. He will be given that opportunity. The Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, obviously inflation underpins any interest rate structure and low inflation underpins a lower interest rate structure. That is the key points, and that's why we've got interest rates at the levels we have today and have not had at other periods.
I warn the
in
member
the
for
past.
Gippsland.
Now, Mr Speaker, there's a lot of front in the opposition asking about interest rates, because the Treasury yesterday went through the interest rate record of the opposition, including particularly the Leader of the Opposition. But it's worth recalling that when the government took office in March 1983, the 90-day bill rate was 15.9%. 15.9%.
Order.
15.9%. And today,
Prime Minister might just wait for a moment. The member for Flinders on a point of order that is relevant to this issue.
It's relevant to the question, Mr Speaker. And the question, if I might remind the Prime Minister, was would he, and he was invited to tell homebuyers and small businesses as to whether or not the crippling round of interest rate rises is over. That's a very simple question. It does not provide the Prime Minister with an opportunity to canvass the history.
The Prime Minister is referring to interest rates. I, as yet, with the constant interjections, don't know the road which he's going down. The Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, let me for the people opposite come at it another way. When I said that inflation underpins any interest rate structure and low inflation underpins this one. The rate of inflation when the present Leader of the Opposition left office as Treasurer was 11.4%. The current rate of inflation is 2.5 and the underlying rate is 2.1. 11.4 to 2.1. That reflected, Mr Speaker, in the whole interest rate structure of the day. In the 90-day bill rate, in his day it was 15.9%. In March 83, in January 95 it was 8.2. the home mortgage rate, which was a regulated rate, remember this, it was a regulated rate, only for those lucky people who could get a loan, was 13.5%. Of course, left to its price in a deregulated market, it would have been up to 16 or 17%. Mr. Speaker,
Order.
in December,
Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
in December
the Deputy Leader of the
1994,
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in December 1994, it was 10.5%. Have you got that? 10.5%. 10.5%. Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker,
The House will come to
Mr.
order.
Speaker, you know, it's a bit rich for the opposition, who could never, as a government, deal with inflation and hence deal with interest rates, to be putting questions to the government where the government has made a number of quick and successive monetary adjustments which I think have had the effect of appropriately slowing the economy, slowing demand and
I warn the
slowing
member for
spending,
McKellar.
so we get a better balance between product and the economy and demand. We get a better balance between what the economy wants to spend and buy and what the economy can produce. That's the point of policy. That's the reference the Treasurer made yesterday. It's the references I've made in public statements. And that's why I think, as I say to the Leader of the Opposition, just keep his eye on the bouncing ball of inflation and remember that he was a double-digit inflation expert. Exactly. He was a double-digit inflation expert, and with an economy growing at 5.5 to 6%, at 5.5 to 6% and 2% inflation, you just wonder, Mr. Speaker, where he could pluck up the courage to ask a question about interest rates.
The honourable member for Maranoa will be on the way out shortly. The honourable member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is also to the Prime Minister. Would the Prime Minister please put the current economic circumstances into proper perspective?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Prime Minister might just resume his seat. When honourable members... Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we've seen...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
There is no point
Mr.
of order.
Speaker, you haven't heard my point of order, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Warringah
Yes,
on the
Mr.
point
Speaker.
of order, which is?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The question invites the Prime Minister to make a statement to this House. It's not appropriate that statements be made in question time. I ask you to rule the question out of order and let's get on with another question.
There is no point of order, and I remind the member for Warringah, if he continues to take those particular matters in that way, he will be dealt with under the standing orders. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen yesterday on Monday in the forecast released by the Treasurer that the economy is continuing to grow strongly, that inflation has been at low levels and remains at low levels, that we are seeing now some slowing in demand in the economy, which has been a slow but desirable correction in activity, as I said a moment ago, so that spending in the economy and product in the economy are much more in balance. That's starting to come into place. And you can see that coming from the dwelling sector, which has peaked, and leading indicators have been declining.
I have already said to members of this House that the Standing Order 55 will be adhered to. That does not invite continued interjection. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the dwelling sector has peaked and leading indicators have been declining.
I name the member for Fisher. The Prime Minister resume his seat.
The member for Fisher be suspended from the service.
The question is the motion be agreed to. All those that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Noes have it. Division required. Ring the bells. The member for Mayor wants to be a bit careful too. I've heard a few interjections from you this week. I've let go. I'll keep that in mind. I don't think I do that. Lock the doors. The question is the motion be agreed to. The ayes will pass to the right of the chair, the noes to the left. I point tellers for the ayes. The honourable members for Fowler and Port Adelaide. Tellers for the noes. The honourable members for Wannon and Riverina. Order. The result of the division is ayes 80, noes 63. The division is therefore resolved in the affirmative. The honourable member is suspended from the service of the House for 24 hours. Order. The House will come to order. The Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, perhaps I could begin again and respond to the question. Mr Speaker, to get the economy for the last year into perspective, we have to understand that we have been growing somewhere between 5.5% to 6% in GDP growth, and with inflation around 2%, and in the last calendar year employment growth was 3.6%. That, I think, are probably the strongest conjunction of figures since the war. The current unemployment rate is 8.9%. That's fallen by 1.7% in the last year, the biggest calendar year fall on record. The highest number ever recorded of Australians in work, 8,073,000, and as the Treasurer indicated a day or so ago, we've created 477,000 jobs since the election, or 721 jobs per day. Now, Mr Speaker, you know the government set
we've been down this road already.
A job creation goal of 500,000 jobs in 3 years. We're 95% on the way to that target in 2 years. An extraordinary fall in long-term unemployment of 61,500. The highest labour force participation by women in the economy ever of 52.9%, and labour productivity growth over the last year of 4%. 4% against the sort of 70s and 80s averages of 1.5 or 1.6. Now, Mr Speaker, the economy is now slowing in some areas. I was saying, dwelling sector has peaked. Consumer and business confidence levels have eased back from their peaks. Real growth in retail trade is below the September quarter, and we're starting to see the fiscal stimulus being unwound. and therefore demand is starting to drift back more towards GDP growth. Now, Mr Speaker, much has been made of the current account deficit, and let me say a couple of things about this in the reflection of these quite extraordinarily good numbers for Australia and the economy in the last 12 months. Mr Speaker, the current account deficit is certainly relatively high, but the situation is so much better than in the past, where the extraordinary health and robust strength of the economy is a completely different fact of life than, say, in 1985 or 86. When the current account deficit was last this high in 1985 or 86, the ratio of exports to GDP was 15%. We were exporting 15% of all we produced. Today we're exporting 22% of all half as much again. Half as much again. The debt service ratio, when the current account was last this large, stood at 21% of GDP. In other words, 21% of our capacity, of our debt servicing requirements, 21% of our product. That's now today 11%. So the exports have gone up by half since then, and the debt service ratio has come down by half. Now, Mr Speaker, and our international competitiveness is 40% better than when John Howard left office as Treasurer. Now, Mr Speaker, let me say this number because, let me repeat the number because around most OECD countries, these sorts of statistics can never be mentioned with any veracity. The Australian economy, on the Treasury's latest statistics, are 40% more competitive when John Howard was the Treasurer in his last days and weeks as Treasurer. 40%. And it's because of that 40% improvement in competitiveness, exports have gone up by half to 22% of GDP, and the debt service ratio has come down. So, Mr Speaker, yes, the current account deficit is relatively high, but the circumstances are completely different than what it was in 1985-86, and when juxtaposed against 477,000 jobs, 5.5 to 6% growth, 2% inflation, 4% productivity. When did anyone in this House ever hear of numbers like that? Never. Ian Sinclair is the only one who's been here longer than me. He never heard of them in his days here. John Howard was never heard of them when he was the Treasurer. And so, Mr Speaker, let's get this, as the questioner says, in perspective. In perspective. So, Mr Speaker, and as the Treasurer will make clear,
I warn the member for O'Connor.
Growth in the current account deficit is coming from investment, strong investment numbers in the economy. Now, Mr Speaker, I want the House to recall that 2 opposition leaders ago, at the end of the last election campaign, the member for Wentworth said Australia was in a double-dip recession, and then in the last week of the campaign he said we're heading into a depression. We're heading into a depression. 6% growth puts the lie to that. Now, Mr Speaker, the Shadow Treasurer said in the budget debate, the business investment figures are crucial to the whole budget. If they don't come in, the budget falls apart. A dark cloud hangs over the future recovery. Business investment is dead in the water. There has simply been no recovery in investment. Now, Mr Speaker, that was last May. That was last May, when the Treasurer was forecasting 14.5% for investment growth. What is it? 24. 24. And that massive growth in the strength of our capital base and our productive capacity, because we are not a producer goods nation in terms of mainframe computers, digitally operated machine tools, comes by way of the current account deficit from imports. Now, Mr Speaker, the Treasurer gave a first-class example yesterday in respect of an LNG carrier costing $300 million on the current account, but carrying $150 million a year of produce, year in, year out for Australia. So, Mr Speaker, I think these numbers need to be put in perspective. Yes, the current account is high, but the conditions are completely different to 1985-6, where we've peeled away the restrictive layers of tariffs, of the regulated exchange rate, of the sclerotic financial markets that John Howard left this country, and now today we have an externally oriented, 40% more competitive, supple, modern Australian economy. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, and if you're out there in the business of looking up polls, and you all regard yourselves as sort of amateur pollsters, though the last election reveals none of you knew the code to the poll, none of you understood the code, let me tell you what the code is. It's got 4 letters, J-O-B-S. J-O-B-S, jobs. And this government has given the J-O-B-S to the Australian
Prime Minister might resume his seat. Order! The House will come to order. Prime Minister, I think, has concluded. Leader of the Opposition. I think you're finished.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, Mr Bob Carr, the New South Wales Labor leader, said that your government, quote, has got to rule out any increases in taxes, that, quote, families that have battled rising interest rates should not have to cop further increases, end of quote, and that you, Paul Keating, should tackle spending, end of quote. Is Mr Carr right to oppose your campaign for tax rises, or do you propose to hide your secret tax agenda until after the New South Wales election, or will you come clean on it now?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think he really means that question. I really do. That's said with such feeling. Now, Mr. Speaker,
Order!
Mr. Speaker, I thought he was on a unity ticket with Bob Carr, the East-West flyer. He's flying yesterday, he tells us. He's going to open the runway over Cogra and Rockdale and all these things, as Mr Carr wishes to do as well.
Order. The Prime Minister will resume his seat. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
But even the Prime Minister could understand this is a question about taxes and a question about whether or not he will disclose his secret tax agenda and a question about...
Order.
Sit
Order.
down.
Prime Minister,
Sit
Prime Minister
down.
might just... The Deputy Leader of the Opposition will allow me to adjudicate on that, and you've got a call for the point of order.
I thought he might make another
Deputy
mobile
Leader's got
telephone call from his car.
You've got the call. What is it?
Mr. Prime Minister, the Prime Minister was asked a question about tax increases, whether or not he agrees with the New South Wales Labor leader that he should rule them out, whether or not he'll come clean about his secret tax agenda before the New South Wales election. Now, he's talking about an east-west runway, which bears no resemblance, and I ask you to direct him to the question.
The Honourable Leader of the House on the point of order.
I take it on that point of order, Mr. Speaker. There is a way of raising points of order in this House. It is specific, precisely to the technical detail of a point of order. That has always been the tradition in this place. It is not an occasion for a speech. And the form in which points of order, it's on your point of order. The form in which that point of order was asked was with a full array of epithets, argument and all the rest of it, which is not permitted.
Order. I think both honourable members have raised valid points of order in their points of order about the way in which those particular sections of the standing order should be adhered to, and we would hope that everybody does adhere to that. The Prime Minister has the call.
Making the point that the Leader of the Opposition was alluding to the New South Wales election. That's right. That was the core of the question. That was the core point of the question. And I was simply making the point that he is fond of quoting the New South Wales Leader of the Opposition, and he has a policy unity with him on opening the East-West runway, was my point. So that Coogee and Randwick and Bondi and Rockdale and Cogra will be overflown by a coalition government.
Order.
I'll just make that
point of order, Mr. Speaker.
There is
point of order, Mr. Speaker.
I've already warned the Honourable Member for Warringah in respect of taking points of order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, under Standing Order 98, I'm entitled to take a point of order.
With that proviso.
And Mr. Speaker, my desire, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that your rulings are respected. You said that the Deputy Leader of the Opposition had a valid point of order. The Prime Minister has just ignored it.
Resume your seat. Can I say to the Honourable Member for Warringah, who likes to do this on occasion and talk about the standing orders, as I've repeatedly remarked in this place, as have many speakers in the past, In terms of the way questions have to be answered, if they go and have a look at procedure committee reports that have made recommendations on that, which successive governments, not just this one, have chosen not to adhere to, perhaps better guidelines would be given to the occupants of the chair. Now, he might be able to exert some authority over that. Why don't you try, the Prime Minister?
Mr Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition in his question made a allusion to taxation, to revenue. And, Mr Speaker, again I think it's worth bearing in mind that in the mid-year review, which the Treasurer announced 2 days ago, government revenue to GDP was 24.0%. Now, this puts Australia, if not the lowest tax country in the OECD or the Western world, within a decimal point of so being. But let me also remind you, Mr Speaker,
Order. No, there's no
let me also remind you
required.
that when the Leader of the Opposition was last Treasurer in his last year, in his last budget, he had government revenue to GDP of 26.1%. 26.1. Mr Speaker, 26.1% of GDP. Now, people might say, well, for those who are not following these numbers perpetually or consistently, what does that mean? The answer, it means $10 billion of extra taxation. That's right. $10 billion of extra taxation. Now, Mr Speaker, that's the record.
The Deputy Leader of the Opposition. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
And let me just remind the member for Bennelong, the Leader of the Opposition, that when I took the Treasury from him, the top marginal rate of tax was 60%. Today it's 47%. When I took the job from him, the company rate was 46%. Today it's 33%. When I took the job from him, the bottom rate of tax was 30%. Today it is 20%. Now, Mr Speaker, these are the relevant statistics which reflect upon the High Priest of high taxation in Australia, J.W. Howard. And that's why I think that we need to keep these things in perspective. Mr Speaker, this is one of the smallest federal government sectors in the Western world. That's right. In the Western world. And let me demonstrate it yesterday by the review again, which had government outlays to GDP at 26.2%, compared to, again, the last year of my friend over here, 28.8%. 28. Hey, big spender. Hey, big spender. You know, he knows all about it. Because I used to say, Mr Speaker, Mr Speaker, on the member for Mayo, there's that look of relief and joviality. You know, he's fairly better. That was the same with the member for Bennelong in 1983. When I became Treasurer in 1983 and took the burden from his shoulders...
Prime Minister might just resume his seat. The member for O'Connor on a point of order. No, those on my right. Every member is entitled to take a point of order.
Mr Speaker, you have drawn the House to many standing orders' attention today, and I wish to make comment on Standing Order 52. The standing order... Look, you won't even know where to look in the book.
No, address to me. Address to me. Let's not get across the chamber. Leader of the House might just contain himself.
The standing order, of course, talks about order shall be maintained in the House by the Speaker.
Correct.
And let me draw to your attention, Mr Speaker, that will never be achieved every time you tolerate this sort of personal abuse.
There's no point of order.
Well, it is, because if you keep it up, I'm going to keep it up. And I've got some nice stories to tell.
Order. Now, I don't think anybody appreciates that. I've already ruled on the matter. The Prime Minister has been asked a question. He is answering that question. I invite him to bring it to a conclusion.
Speaker, I thought the rather jovial allusion made very clear this point, and that was, if you had an economy which was introspective, ring-fenced by tariffs, with 11% inflation and 10% unemployment, and it created only 300,000 jobs over 7 years, and its average rate of growth was under 2%, you'd walk out of the job as if the weight of the world was on your shoulders. And the member for Bennelong did just that, and it fell to this government to remodernise this country a bit. Now, Mr Speaker, as part of that process, Now we've got so much growth. And we've had a lot of demand.
Member for Flinders, the member for Mayo.
And particularly in investment, there is a requirement that the public sector plays a larger role in the savings base of the country. That's the point the Treasurer made the other day. I've made it. This we will do in the budget. And, Mr Speaker, when we come to the budget, we'll look at all the options, as we have, in my case, in the 8 budgets I presented and the 7 May statements and the 3 Prime Ministerial statements, as the Treasurer has done in the budgets he's presented and the ERC rounds he's presided in and has presided over and participated in. And in that, Mr Speaker, we'll come to, I hope, and expect the right judgments. But we'll expect, Mr Speaker, the opposition to show some form and at least give the Parliament and the country the respect the government's budget deserves. Now, Mr Speaker, and not to be driven back to the sort of the silly games being played in the Senate of a couple of years ago about trying to upbraid the government, but in doing so putting the national interest asunder. Mr Speaker, this government has never had any difficulty whatsoever.
I warn the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Putting its budgets together, in articulating them, in explaining them and getting support for them, and we'll do just that on this occasion.
The honourable member for Scullin. Mr Speaker, my question is directed to the Treasurer. Can the Treasurer advise the House what prospects there are for improvement in the medium term in the balance of payments?
The honourable Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to do so. Mr Speaker, I can say that there are some encouraging prospects for improvement in the balance of payments in the medium term, but I must say at the outset that that doesn't remove the need for action to be taken to improve it further. Let me just refer to some of the factors which give us that confidence for improvement in the future. Firstly, of course, we all know rural exports at the present time are being affected by the drought. The impact on the balance of payments this year of the drought and reduced rural exports is about $2 billion. And of course there are now signs of the drought breaking with recent rains. If it does completely break, we can expect rural exports to recover quite strongly after this year. Rural commodity prices are increasing. They're up 11% in the last 12 months, in the year to January, and that will gradually feed into actual export prices. In relation to non-rural commodities, exports have fallen this year. They're down 7.2% in the first half of the year, or about $1.2 billion. And this is because of falls in volumes in some cases and price falls in others. A good example of volume fall is gold, where it appears previous stockpiling by the buyers of gold overseas has meant they're running down their stocks at the present time and reducing their purchases from us. That's reduced our sales by about $500 million in a half a year in respect of gold. And in respect of coal and iron ore, it's essentially a price factor. As members would be aware, in the negotiations last year with the Japanese, there was a further reduction in prices. That was about the 4th year in a row for iron ore, but that's now been turned around with a 7% increase from April of this year. And in relation to coal, the producers are currently renegotiating their price contracts in Japan, and they also expect prices to rise after several years of falling prices. Now, overall, Mr Speaker, the outlook for commodity prices remains positive because of expectations of continued economic growth in Japan and Europe, increasing growth, and declining world-based metal stocks. The growth in Australia's major trading partners is around 4.5%, expected to be that over the next year or two, and that of course is solid growth which should serve our non-rural exports quite well. In respect of resource exports, I should say also that we'll benefit from some expansion to our mining capacity. In addition to the commissioning of several new mines, there have been a number of significant expansions to existing mines. New mines to have come on stream recently or expected to commence soon include the Mount Keith nickel mine, the Marandoo iron ore mine and the MacArthur River lead and zinc mine. As the Speaker, in respect of exports of manufactured goods and services, we've seen those grow very, very strongly since the mid-80s because of the factors that the Prime Minister has been referring to earlier, our greatly improved competitiveness and the fact that those industries have become much more export-oriented. and their manufactured exports have trebled in the 8 years since 85-6, and services have almost trebled. Of course, we expect, although that rate of growth is down somewhat this year, the continued improvement in rates of growth the rest of the world should see them pick up again in the future. In respect of imports, Mr Speaker, the major factor in the strong growth of imports at the moment is increased business investment, which, as we know, is now growing at some 24%, and likewise we're seeing imports of capital goods increase by 24% in the first half of this financial year. Next year we would not expect business investment to grow at such a remarkable rate, so we'd expect less pressure on imports, although we would expect that business investment next year will still be quite strong. Also, these imports add to productive capacity and future export potential, and the LNG tanker is a good example of that. We also expect the rate of growth of demand and output to come much closer together in next year than they are at the present time. As members are aware, we've got currently a gap of something like 2% between the rate of growth of demand and of output. That's spilling over into imports and giving us a substantial increase in the current account deficit. We expect that gap to narrow without doing anything else, just with what's in place at the present time. As the Prime Minister said earlier, we expect that gap to narrow very considerably, and so that there will be less spilling over into imports as a result of that narrowing. But of course, if we take further action, as I've foreshadowed, in relation to the budget, then that will mean that there will be an even lesser gap than would otherwise be the case. Hopefully there won't be any such gap, and we won't have the spilling over of demand into imports in the way that we've seen in the past. We'll also, by having that tightening, we'll also improve our savings performance, and that is absolutely essential for continued improvement to our current account deficit, and to give us a rate of growth of the economy which is sustainable. And that, of course, is what we all want to see: strong, sustainable growth. We have a situation at the moment where growth is exceedingly strong. We can see that growth pared back a little to sustainable levels, and still have very, very good outcomes, still see employment growing strongly, still see the unemployment rate coming down, still see real wages and real household disposable incomes continuing to rise, and that's what Australians want.
Exactly.
The honourable member for Barker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Get things in perspective, as he puts it. Prime Minister, you said to Premier Groom yesterday that you would send down a couple of officers to get the dud coops out of the Tasmanian list within a fortnight. However, of the 124 coops listed for further evaluation in Victoria, 13 were logged last year, 10 are now being logged, 2 are designated for firewood, and 5 simply don't exist. Now, apart from how you intend to evaluate the ones that don't exist, will you also send a couple of officers to get the dud coops out of Victoria, out of New South Wales and Western Australia, where the situation is much worse? Will you now agree that this shambles organised by your nitwit Senator Faulkner has demeaned and undermined the conservation...
Order. The honourable member for Barker will withdraw that comment and refer to members of the other place in the correct title.
The Prime Minister uses those words all the time.
Refer to them by their correct title.
Well, is this going to apply
and withdraw.
to him?
Well, I'll substitute the word nonsensical, Minister.
Just refer to the Minister.
Has demeaned and undermined the conservation evaluation process detailed in the National Forest Policy Statement. And would you now agree that the National Forest Policy Statement, a contract you signed 2 years ago with the states, should be implemented as a matter of urgency and implemented to the letter?
The Honourable Prime Minister. Order. Those in the gallery have been warned today. And I'm sure you would like to hear the answer. The Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker.
Order.
Mr Speaker, let me just make a couple of points. First, about the National Forest Policy Statement. This has been the Commonwealth's approach to dealing with this stress on the issue of the environment versus the timber industry, ways of getting agreement across the Commonwealth for the development of regional forest agreements. A regional forest agreement can then look at all of the values of a particular area of a state or state. Representative reserve systems can be established, and no longer will the industry then be set up with a coop-by-coop chase about whether some particular area has been logged, never been logged, pristine stands, etc. Now, Mr. Speaker, that's the point of it. Now, at this point, not one regional forest agreement has been entered into because the Commonwealth has to be invited to participate. So, Mr. Speaker, let's make it clear the reason that they have not been agreed is because the Commonwealth hasn't been invited, and Tasmania is the only state that has not signed the National Forest Policy Statement. Premier Groom is the only person who hasn't signed the National Forest Policy Statement. Now, Mr. Speaker, the people in the gallery who applauded the member who asked the question should understand that the future for them under a Liberal Party policy, the future for them is not regional forest agreements or the National Forest Policy Statement, but a coop-by-coop fight, which in the long run, Mr. Speaker, they'll cheer the foresters on when they know full well Australian public opinion will in the end win out to save those important stands of forests. They know that. And the forest industry people know it too, that it's a battle against a great reservoir of Australian public opinion in favour of our natural habitat and those important historic high stands of trees, pristine stands of trees. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have, as an alternative, been working to the development of a plantation-based industry and a regrowth industry, and we're a very long way down that road. And we want to see now an appropriate set of balanced policies in place to protect what's left of those old-growth forests. A completely reasonable and responsible national objective. Now, Mr. Speaker, and it will only ever be a Labor government that actually establishes this policy for the forest industry. It will only ever be a Labor government that puts the adjustment packages into place to let them move to other areas or to take them out of some of their debts or to let them make that transition.
Might be a little careful.
Now, Mr. Speaker, the question comes from the coalition. There's a coalition government in New South Wales, in Victoria, in Western Australia, in South Australia and Tasmania. Not one regional forest agreement in the big logging states of New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania has been entered into. Not one. Yesterday I met Premier Groom in all good faith, and I said to him that in terms of the verification process of some of these coops, we would try and get it over quickly. He put out the most tawdry press statement saying that he'd basically screwed these concessions out of the Prime Minister, that he had demanded a meeting with me and 2 weeks later and I'd given it to him, etc., etc. In other words, he came not with any interest in the Tasmanian people or its forest industries, he came with his own shabby political interests. His own tawdry, miserable, rotten political interests.
Order, now, the House will come to order.
So I did the only thing I could do with such a person. I dismissed the meeting and told him that we'll carry on.
Order, those on my left.
Now, Mr. Speaker, what I said on the 27th of January was government policy. I read from the press statement I issued, government policy to protect these areas until their values are properly assessed. And that's what we'll do, until they're properly assessed. Now, Mr. Speaker, it will be, of course, true that some were logged and logged recently. But, Mr. Speaker, let me remind you that when Senator Faulkner sought the cooperation of the states, he was denied the cooperation. New South Wales and Tasmanian governments responded that they would not cooperate when he tried on a number of occasions to list their support in the assessment process. The Commonwealth is not a forestry agency. The Commonwealth doesn't have contemporary, to the week, to the month, coop-by-coop records. It has to be done in cooperation with the states. But there has been no cooperation from the states. So it's, this notion that some coop is listed on the 511 list and one is missing, it's been logged, It may have been logged in the last month, the last 2 weeks. It may have been logged since the state last supplied data to the Commonwealth. At any rate, one thing is very clear. Senator Faulkner, when he tried, was rebutted by New South Wales and Tasmania, who wouldn't provide the information. So therefore, it'll take longer for the Commonwealth to establish which of those 511 coops do adequately reflect the national conservation value targets of national estate areas, heritage values, high conservation values, endangered species, etc. And upon that, first of all, cursory and examination, and then a more cursory assessment, and then verification, where people actually walk into stands and look where they are in a contemporary way, that will take some time. But, Mr Speaker, wouldn't you think if you're a Tasmanian Premier and you were worried about the forest industry's employment, you'd do something which was genuine, instead of something that was tawdry and grubby? You know, coming up to have a meeting, then run off and put out a cheap little press statement, instead of trying to actually help people keep their jobs in Tasmania. Now, Mr Speaker, I've told the states, as far as we're concerned, we're prepared to try and assess quickly the status of these particular coops and then to verify them. But in the doing of that, we'll be bringing up to speed Commonwealth knowledge of those particular coops, which in the ordinary course of events resides with state forestry departments. Now, Mr Speaker, but that is the consequence of the Commonwealth having the export power over wood chips. Now, Mr Speaker, that is what the government has said it will do. That's what I said we would do on the 27th of January, Mr Speaker. That is what we will do.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I ask that under the
Leader of the National Party.
I ask that under the relevant standing orders, the Prime Minister table the notes to which he was referring.
Are they private notes?
Then I seek to table the exchange of correspondence that's taken place in relation to this matter, including the quite extraordinary letter that the Prime Minister...
Leave is not granted. The honourable member for Lowe. Order. Before I call the member for Lowe, I note that the MPI today is very much caught up in this issue, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more of it. The member for Lowe.
Mr Speaker, my question without notice is directed to the Minister for Communications and the Arts. Can the Minister inform the House of benefits to Australia's economy, the balance of payments and the Australian consumers arising from the government's telecommunications reforms?
The Honourable Minister for Communications and the Arts.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, while the opposition continues to talk down the economy, it fails to give due credit to those industries, such as the telecommunications industry, that are investing, that are employing and that are increasing exports for Australia. Since the mid-1980s, this government has introduced a whole series of reforms that have introduced a competitive regime in telecommunications, and that's encouraged the growth of investment in manufacturing of telecommunications equipment, and in particular has encouraged the carriers to invest billions of dollars in improving the telecommunications infrastructure here in Australia. Now, the opposition's not too interested in an industry that's generating a lot of jobs. An industry that's generating a lot of jobs and it's positioning Australia for the next century. But let me tell you, Mr Speaker, that this industry, this investment in capital equipment is showing up as increased imports to some extent. But there's been a dramatic increase in the amount of equipment which is supplied by the domestic telecommunications manufacturing industry. And the recent report of the Telecommunications Industry Development Authority has made it clear that about 70% of that massive investment in equipment is Australian content. 70% is Australian content. And we've seen export sales of telecommunications go from $50 million a decade ago, when the policies of the Leader of the Opposition were affecting the industry, to more than $800 million this year. So from $50 million in exports to $800 million in exports, which is directly the result of this government's industry development arrangements that will continue to ensure there's further growth in exports in this sector, growing at the moment at 28% per annum a year, 28% compound. There aren't too many industries that can match that. And at the same time, this competition has meant that consumers are also getting the benefits. Whether they're residential or corporate customers, consumers these days are benefiting by more than $300 million a year because of the competition that's been introduced in telecommunications. So as a result of the policies of this government, there's lower prices for consumers, there's greater investment and greater jobs in manufacturing in this industry. So while
Member for Wills is very excited this week. Relax.
So while John Fahey refuses to introduce competition in electricity, and while Jeff Kennett refuses to deregulate the legal profession in Victoria, this government introduces competition and greater benefits in telecommunications.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, I ask leave of the House to move a motion forthwith that this House censures the Prime Minister for his continued deceiving of the Australian people in relation to 1, his management of the economy and his threats to impose new burdens on Australian families through higher interest rates and higher taxation, 2, his failure after 12 years in office to tackle the fundamental problems of Australia's current account deficit, 3, the massive accumulation of foreign debt under his stewardship, 4, his failure to provide a stable and predictable environment in which families and small businesses can plan their futures, 5, for presiding over a nation in which the rich have got richer and the poor have got poorer, and 6, his cynical use of interest group politics at the expense of timber workers and their families.
Leave granted. Leave is granted. Order.
You're going to bring it on? You're going to bring it on?
Order.
You're going to just yes or no. You're going to bring it on.
Resume your seat.
You're going to take it.
The Leader of the Opposition will resume his seat.
Take it. Yes or no. You're going to take it. Take it.
Resume your seat. Resume your seat, both. The Leader of the Opposition has sought leave to move that motion. I am turning to the government to ask if they accept.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition had a very poor question time. He wants to recover it.
Order!
I will, of course, join issue with him with pleasure.
He's accepted it. All right?
Yeah. Well, Mr Speaker, I move that so much of the standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent the Leader of the Opposition moving forthwith that this House... I move that this House censures the Prime Minister for his continued deceiving of the Australian people in relation to his management of the economy, his threats to impose new burdens on Australian families through higher interest rates and higher taxation, his failure after 12 years in office to tackle the fundamental problems of Australia's current account deficit, the massive accumulation of foreign debt under his stewardship, 4, his failure to provide a stable and predictable environment in which families and small businesses can plan their future, 5, for presiding over a nation in which the rich have got richer and the poor have got poorer, and finally his cynical use of interest group politics at the expense of timber workers and their families. Mr Speaker.
Order. Before you start, before the honourable member for Bennelong, the Leader of the Opposition, starts, I again appeal to those in the gallery. A censure motion in this parliament is the most serious motion that can be moved. Both of those people most concerned with this will have a chance to speak, and I'm sure put interests that are represented by people in the gallery, give them that courtesy. Otherwise, the attendants will be asked to clear the galleries. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I might say in the 20 years that I've been in Parliament, that is the first time I've ever heard a Speaker make that threat. The first time I've heard that threat be made, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself for orchestrating that.
Order. Now, Leader of the Opposition, just calm down. Nothing has been orchestrated. I've heard your comment just there. It's not a threat. I am simply suggesting to those in the gallery we want to hear, in this place, there is no threat. That is the standing orders of this parliament, which those in this place constantly remind me to uphold. The Leader of the Opposition on the censure motion. The Leader of the Opposition has the call.
Mr Speaker, this is the first sitting of the Parliament in this year,